Of course, the right thing to do is to eat chocolate at the beginning of every session. I'm afraid I don't come bearing chocolate. I instead come bearing a card that says how to be good, which might have been a little bit of a mistake as a contrast frame. But I'm going to be talking a little bit about the card, a little bit about talking to young people about ethics, and a little bit about some of the big concepts that I think they can really take on board. So firstly, having a look at the card itself. For me, we're going to talk about what's on the card in a bit, but for me, the sheer fact that you can give a young person a card, tell them what's on it, and then they can carry it around, and they can put it in their wallet, and they can feel, or put it in their person, feel that it's there for them, I think is a very important thing. I've given a talk to students that I've known for years now, and months or even years later, just as they're finishing school, they'll come and they'll open their wallet and say, look, I've got the card. It's a bit like, do you remember Chelsea Brown with the Campbell's Cash and Carry, where she always said, you've got to have this card. I feel that, you know, with these kids, the fact that the card is right there is something that keeps the idea of ethics and how to be good close to you. I actually got the idea from Tony Blair, not directly, but he. I remember in about 1997, you know, you normally get these sort of policy manifestos and so on that go for pages and pages. He put the entire British Labor Party election platform on a credit card and handed it out to everybody, and it was absolutely clarifying. I don't know how often he then referred to it in office. However, it really was a striking thing about, yes, you can carry something around with you. So that's the card. So firstly, I mean, why is it that you would teach ethics? Now, we've taught, I mean, ethics has gone from generation to generation for years and years now, and for centuries and centuries. However, for me, the idea of getting it out into schools and having parents rationally talk with their children about it it was an article by Simon Longstaff, who I think is speaking tomorrow. And he said, he runs the St James Ethics Centre, and he said before the global, he wrote in about 2009, and he said, he said before the global financial crisis, people would ask me all the time, why do you want to be talking about ethics in these everyday situations all the time, in schools, in banks, everywhere? He said, since the GFC, nobody has ever asked me that question again. And I think there's really something in that sense that the global financial crisis, I think, was caused so much not by a leader or a particular dominant group, but simply a whole lot of middle-class people making middle-class decisions and perhaps not having the ethical and background that they needed. So it's a sense of, well, what do we want our children and our students to be as they leave school? And if you ask yourself the question, for those of you with children, would you rather your child was smart or good? And I'd provide some thinking music if I could. However, you can't say both. A lot of you probably, perhaps even reluctantly, have said, I think I'd rather they were good, which really turns a whole lot of education on its head, because you're thinking, well, the schools and also what we do at home, instead of using those joyless swat-up books that we have about comprehension and mathematics and so on, perhaps we should be talking ethics more with them. So I think that's really important. I also think that the way in which society has gone is significant here. Almost all the previous generations of children were taught ethics through a moral authoritarian authority. The model was, whether it came from the state or a religious figure or even the parents, it was do as I do or do as I say, and that was the end of it. And there wasn't really much of a discussion. And we know that for thousands of years. But what's happened just in the last generation or two is there's been that complete opening up, in one sense, of okay, well, let's ask the question why. Let's have a look. Perhaps this isn't all as simple as we've gone. So it's like can you have a horizontal slide? But it's a slide across, and then I think what's happened is there's been a further slide into what we would call permissiveness. The idea that one set of values is just as good as another set of values, and it would actually, to impose a set of values on kids, is to make us look like our grandparents or our great-grandparents. So I think this really says, a reason why we need to be teaching ethics in a particular way, because otherwise they're in this permissive morass. So if you come back a step to what we would call liberal enlightenment teaching, and whether it's in the home or in the school, in which we do say some sets of values are better than others. Kindness is better than cruelty, for example, and go from there and say, but the way to teach this is to open it up and to explore it and to have conversations about it. That, I think, is the way that a 21st century generation is going to be getting the ethics. I mean, anything that you've really believed in your life, perhaps when you were at uni and afterwards, you believed it because it bubbled up from within you. It's not something that you were told it and went, okay, I've got to believe that. You came to your own decision about it. So I think providing the structured liberal space for children to learn and understand how to be good, how to understand ethics, is incredibly important. So the next thing is how to engage ethics, having ethics conversations with kids. It's not all that easy all the time. It's usually easier to go and let them do something else, or to have a conversation about what they did today at school, how their most recent game has gone, and so on. But I think there are places that you can really find that space. For younger children, places like the bath and the dinner table. For older children, as you can see in the PowerPoint here, long trips in the car is a great place because they don't have much else to do, and if they're not listening to something, you can see how old this photo is. Can you see that very historic Discman that girl is listening to? So places like cars. And also organising times. So you can have a Wednesday night pizza and discussion about ethics. So there's a number of places that you can find. And also being opportunistic. When you hear an issue come up, be ready to jump onto it. But three simple tips, I guess, on how to speak with a child. And by child, I'm thinking anybody between the age of 7 or 8, anything up to 15 or 16. The first one would be to let them talk. If I've got a bit of a rule of thumb, if you find yourself speaking more than they are speaking, then you've probably been speaking for far too long. So, one, let them talk. And if I can give you an example, I was working with a group of Year 9 people, and we were talking about following rules. And we used the example of a rule called no balking in a line-out in a rugby game, because most of them were passionate rugby people. And it's, I mean, it doesn't matter what the rule is, but it's a rule of the game. And I was saying, well, if the ref wasn't watching, would you break that rule to try to get a bit of an advantage? And one or two kids said, yeah, we'd break that. That's the ref's job. If the ref doesn't see what we're doing, well, why do we have to be the ones to not do it, and to put up our hand and say we've done the wrong thing? And I sort of ate my hand. And then somebody else started talking, and they agreed. They said, well, that's the ref's job, we're just out there to win, and so on. And so, I got up to my wrist or my elbow at that point. But I thought, no, wait, the right, another idea will come out. And sure enough, the third or fourth person to speak said, hang on, when we go to play rugby, we're all agreeing on a particular set of rules. And we all said, when we came onto this field, these are the rules we're going to play by. And sure, the ref might catch us, but it's our job to live by them, because that's why we're playing. And slowly the others came round to it as well. And the point I'm making is, because they were the ones who came up with the idea, because they came up with essentially a lock social contract idea, which I'll be talking about a bit later, because they came up with it, it meant much more to them, and I'm sure 15 or 10 people were changed in that discussion, whereas if I had said as the authority figure, no, you've got to obey the rules, probably 1 or maybe -2 people would have actually made a difference. Another one is playing devil's advocate. So have the opposite point of view. And they can know that if you say something that's different, that's poking their point of view, it's not because you really disagree with them, but because you're trying to open it up and you're trying to look at other perspectives and so on. And I think that can be done day to day when talking, whether it's your own children, whether you're teaching an ethics class somewhere, whether you're talking to other young people. And the other one is to be prepared for surprises. You never quite know where a discussion is going to go, and in an example, again from a year or two ago, I was talking to a group about parties and what happens if your best friend invites you to a party and then somebody who you don't really know very well invites you to a much better party later on. What do you do? And of course I knew the right answer was you go to your best friend's party, because that's the loyal thing to do. But they said, oh, no, what you do is, okay, you go talk to the person having the better party and ask them to invite your friend, so they can go to the party as well, and then you do something about, you text your friend and then get them to go over to this other one, and then your best friend can have a party some other time and you get 2 parties out of it. And it did make me think, well, yes, some ethics and values idea, that was social media and the speed of being able to make social arrangements shifting a little bit. And I learned something out of that. So it's that sense of always being prepared for surprises. Last night I was talking, one of my daughters was reading Harry Potter, so I asked whether Draco Malfoy was born bad or whether he's just a victim of bad parenting. And she said bad parenting, so I then said, what about Lucius Malfoy's parents? Were they bad? But interestingly, it then went to the distinction between what is it to be naughty and what is it to be mean. And that's not a distinction I'd ever really thought that much about before, but it came out of the discussion. And again, you never quite know where they're going to come from. Okay, I'm now going to spend about 10 minutes going through this card and the sorts of things that you can tell young people. So if you can get your card out, I don't know if you can read it. So I guess most of them are blank. Some of them have got the name of the school that I'm the head of, a place called Oxley College, which of course is a very happy and a very good school. So I'm sorry, some of you have got our school's watermark on it, but most of you have got a clear one. But anyway, in talking to young people, let's have a 10-minute philosophy infusion here. The first thing to say is it's okay to have pleasure. When you start talking about ethics, I think it's easy for young people to think, oh God, we're going to be told to go and work at an old people's home for the rest of our lives. And it's important to say, no, it's okay to have pleasure as part of it. Now, that doesn't mean you immediately go and visit the flesh pots of King's Cross and things like that. It just means the pleasure of eating an ice cream, or the pleasure of having a conversation, or something like that. So the first one's enjoying pleasure. Now, I've actually, for those of you that know a bit more about it, I've taken that from a much bigger philosophy of Bentham, but just focusing that it's okay to have some pleasure. I want to spend another minute or two on Aristotle. I think he's probably the most important one here. I think that word, eudaimonia, is the most important word the card, and an incredibly important word. It essentially translates to well-being. And so two things here. If you ask yourself, I think happiness is a very high bar. If you ask yourself, am I happy? You think, oh, I'm but I'd be much happier if I had a cocktail right now that I was sipping, and if it was a beach down here, and the sun was shining and so on. I mean, if you ask yourself if you're happy, it's always possible to imagine much more. If you ask yourself, do I have well-being? In a way, the bar is lower, but it is I think it's a more peaceful and a more attainable feeling. And you can say from moment to moment, yes, I do have well-being, I am comfortable, I am interested in this thing, things are okay. So, to have eudaimonia is a very important and very powerful concept for kids to carry around. And also to say here that there are three different types of happiness. Pleasure. The second one is life as a free and responsible citizen. So, I mean, they don't quite get that at first, but to be able to say, living in a free society where you get to vote, where you know people aren't going to come and knock on your door at night and take you away, where probably in the next few years you're not going to be asked to go and fight in a senseless war. To live as a free and responsible citizen is a thing. And the third one is life as a thinker and philosopher. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to go out and get a PhD in philosophy, but the idea that you can, by talking, by thinking, by reflecting, by speculating in your life, you get pleasure and you get enjoyment. An example I often use with kids is if you were told that you were going to get a free BMW, top of the line. I never know what the top of the line BMW is, so I have to ask them the model. But what if you got a free top of the line BMW, how would you feel? And they also, that's pretty good, particularly if they've just got their license. And I say, okay, how does it feel now if you find out that everybody in the year group, indeed every child in the area of your age, has been given the same car? Your driving comfort is exactly the same. Your level of comfort, of driving power, nothing's changed. How do you feel? And of course, it's nowhere near as interesting because everyone's got one. So the only thing making consumer goods and making products of that sort exciting and pleasurable is the scarcity, is the fact that you've got it and somebody else doesn't. But then there's another category of thing. I say, if you go out and have a great cup of coffee with a friend, how is that? And they go, oh, well, that's okay. And then you say, well, what if you found out that every other child in the area of your age had also gone out and had a cup of coffee and enjoyed the company of a friend? They go, well, that's every bit as okay, that's fine. And so that idea that there are good things and there are pleasures that if other people are sharing them as well, they're every bit as good. And they're the pleasures to focus on. And you can see that for a sustainable society and for a society where there is well-being, they're the sorts of things you want the next generation to really be focusing on. Doing things like spending their money going to happiness and its causes conferences instead of buying the latest model BMW. Although I think this was quite a bit cheaper than the latest model BMW. Okay, so that's not Plato. I had all these statues of old busts and things, and I thought, oh, they look so boring. So I put Greek man into Google, and of the sites that weren't blocked, this person came up. So we can imagine this is Plato, a vibrant, living person with an idea. So Plato says, okay, put your desires and so on into balance, and know that you've got your reason, you've got your emotions, and you've got your appetites. And if you've got all three, and you keep them in some sort of balance, then that is a good thing. So again, validates for young people the idea that, yeah, we really do have desires, and we know what we're talking about, and we have appetites. But our emotions and the way we feel are really important, and also our wisdom. So being able to talk about that. I'm sure that's what Epicurus looked like. And this quote up here often has a really resonant effect. Nothing is enough for the person to whom enough is too little. I say it a couple of times, and the penny drops after a bit. And we're old enough to know it, but for young people, that idea that you could get that house or you could get that car, if you're aiming for more than just enough, you're never going to be satisfied. So then to go on and to be able to talk about the happy life where you're tranquil, there's no fear, and your family and your friends are around. Now, of course, a lot of them, the last thing they want to know is that family is something that causes you pleasure. It really only causes them pain in their minds. But to say family and friends and people around you and safety are really important. Okay, so that's Epicurus. I think the most important thing on the card, apart from the fact that you can put it in your pocket. I have written a book on this, but you can't put that in your pocket. So it all gets down to a card. But how to be happy, I think the most important bit is this bit here, be good, see over. And then you flip it over, and the bottom bit of the how to be good is to be happy. And then you flip it over. And for me, that act of saying the two things are interchangeable and they're two sides of the same coin or the same card is the message to send. Okay, I'm going to flick through the how to be good very quickly because this isn't a conference on goodness and its causes. But I think it's important that students know about the idea of the social contract, that the society that we have constructed from a 1,000-year point of view, a society under laws, a society that is predictable. Again, you know you're not going to be arrested when you go out and thrown in jail in an arbitrary way, or beaten up by a rampaging gang just outside. That is a society that is rare and that has come at some cost. And that the social contract means that they give things back to that. Or there are certain rules such as going 160 kilometres down the road and so on is part of what you do, is part of what you don't do as part of the social contract. So giving them that sense of responsibility from a young age. That's John Mill, I got him from Facebook. And he's somewhere in Australia, I'm not sure where. But one of the things to ask students is whether acts, or essentially do a utilitarian philosophy, which is, do the acts cause more pleasure or more pain? And talking about do acts cause more happiness, and this is where Mill came from, or do they cause more sadness or upset? And that is how you can judge, or a good way of judging whether an act is right or not. Kant, that's Soraya Kant, who is a Fijian lady, and this is her on her yearly holiday. I should say I only went to their profile and their first picture. I didn't go into their albums. But if you want to act ethically, you look at whether an act is right in and of itself. And so this is the big a very, very different way of asking whether something's right. So your grandmother's knitted you a jumper and it's absolutely appalling for Christmas, and you're asked, do you like it? Well, a utilitarian would say, oh, well, is it going to cause more pain or pleasure? Am I going to insult my grandmother? On the other hand, if I say I like it, she's going to knit me another one next year. And on this goes. But that's a utilitarian approach. A deontological approach would be, well, lying is bad. We all know lying is bad. We don't lie. And so we should indicate to Granny that this is not the best sort of present. That's the categorical imperative. That's essentially a version of do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Okay, now, this is just a sense of which one's which. Is the utilitarian or the deontological principle the one that would really power you? This is Elizabeth Anscombe. I'll let you guess which one's the philosopher. And this one is virtue ethics, which essentially says look for the person, look for somebody who you really admire, and what would they do in effect. And there's a lot more to it, but to look at the lives of very virtuous people and using people as examples, not principles. So that's the card in 10 minutes. I want to hark back in the last 8 or 10 minutes that we've got and actually have a little bit of a discussion about an issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask people to come onto stage. I'd like the entire fourth row of this section and this section, if you could come onto the stage. I think the fourth row's actually got the cameraman in it. That's silly of me. But if you could all come onto stage, I'd really appreciate that. A round of applause for row 4, thank you. Okay, so we're going to play for a couple of minutes something called ethics discussion tennis. And what it is I'm going to get, hang on. We're going to do this question. I'm going to get one side to defend one point and another side to defend another point. They get to make a few points, but then they get to choose which side they believe in, and they move. And then we'll make another more points, and then maybe they're convinced by some other arguments, and they can move again. But this is essentially, imagine it like a tennis court, with one point of view over here, the other point of view over here. Our question for the last 6 minutes is, at the moment that he's about to discover the cure for cancer, Dr. John Noble goes into sudden heart and lung failure and is rushed to hospital. As it turns out, there's the murderer Scuggs Skunkley in hospital who has a terminal illness. So he's only got, let's say, about 2 or 3 more months to live. His organs are completely compatible with Dr. Noble's. Okay, so all you've got to do is knock Scuggs Skunkley on the head. That's Phil Spector, by the way. You know how he normally has those huge wigs? That's his mugshot. Anyway, would you kill Scuggs Skunkley or not? So let's start off with this side. If you could think of arguments why you would kill Scuggs Skunkley and give it to the noble man who's about to discover the cure for cancer. If you people could think, no, we can't start killing people in hospitals to harvest their organs. Okay, so just 30 seconds, working out what you think. If you want to ask the person next to you as well, that's also fine. Okay, we're ready? Okay, can we get one person? Who's going to start? Okay, thank you. Okay, somebody to start. You can say anything. Okay, who's going to talk? Can you? Oh, there you go. Okay, we're going to start over here. Okay, just 20 seconds on what you think.
Our reasons are very simple. He's not very useful as he is, so,
Yep.
we should do something good for the world and just kill him.
Okay, excellent. Okay, hold on to the microphone. Okay, so you can see the utilitarian argument coming out there. There's no use for this guy. Over here.
We should let him live.
Yep.
Because people can change.
Okay.
Even in a short time.
Yep. Okay, good. Okay, so we've got the possibility
he's a sentient being, and
Okay.
we shouldn't be taking life.
Okay, so that's a more deontological approach. Sentient being shouldn't take life, doesn't matter whose it is. Okay, we're now going to imagine a tennis ball that's flown over to this side. Who would like to respond to that? Come on, somebody else. It's okay. Could everybody here please commit to applauding the person who makes a contribution? Okay, whatever you say, they're going to love you.
A person's reason for living is important in terms of their actions. So if he hasn't put in good actions, he has less of a reason to exist than the person who could cure cancer.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. No, you keep the microphone. Okay, and the metaphorical ball comes back over here. Who's going to reply to that? Everybody will love you.
I was just going to say that that's a perception of someone's value, and that's not us. That's not for us to judge. Everyone has the right to life.
Okay, fantastic. And back over. A response. Doesn't have to be long.
We're giving a lot more people the opportunity to have life because we're about to cure cancer.
Okay, excellent. And one last one over here.
What gives us the power to make that decision?
Okay, good, thank you. Now, that clap was only smaller because I cut everybody off, okay? What we're going to do now is, if you want to change your mind, you can move to the other side, okay? That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, this is the part where, remember I talked about playing devil's advocate earlier? This is the part where it comes in really useful. So I'm going to go over here. Sure we don't have anybody who's... Okay. I thought they were really good. This murderer is going to die anyway in a few months. He already has terminal cancer. There are so many, hundreds, thousands of people who are going to benefit from this person. It is such an extreme case. It's not like we're going harvesting every person who's feeling ill. They are a murderer, and the other person's about to discover the cure for cancer. It's such an extreme case that we can just be utilitarian in this case, surely. Okay, back over there. Anybody?
Can we ask him what he thinks?
No, he doesn't want to die. He's
Skunkly.
an amoral murderer.
Can we ask him, you yourself are dying of cancer, would you like to do one good thing, that's your last act?
Yep. Okay. I'm channeling Scug Skunkly here. And he's saying, no, get stuffed. I am looking forward to the last episodes of Breaking Bad, and there is no way that I'm going. So sorry about that. Okay, so another point over there.
The cure for cancer may come up by another scientist.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you. And then back to me. Yes, it might, but that's going to be a long time in the coming, and there are going to be thousands of people who die in the meantime. Anyway, the point of this was not, and my time's up, but the point of this was not so much to decide whether Scug Skunkly should be killed, but to have a discussion back and forth, to be playing. I had to take one of those techniques on, unexpectedly, the devil's advocate, to keep the discussion going, to physicalise decisions. And another really good thing that this does is it shows that it's okay to change your mind. That as you listen to more arguments, you can move back and forth. And indeed, many times I've done this, and kids have moved from one side of the room to the other a number of times in a single lesson. Anyway, I'm overstaying my welcome here, but what I wanted to get across was that it is important to talk to young people about ethics. It is important to talk in such a way that respects them, and there's lots of great stuff to talk about. So thank you to the audience, and thank you.